I am so happy to welcome Dayna Martin to our little show for the awakened parent. And Dayna is a peaceful parenting advocate. She's been an unschooler for a very long time, kind of really brought unschooling to prominence through the media. She's featured on the Oprah show, the Jeff Probst show, and wow, the name of the other guy's gone out of my head. What's his name?
Dr. Phil?
Dr. Phil! Dr. Phil on the Dr. Phil show. How could I forget? And we're very excited to have her here speaking. I know she's so passionate about children's rights, which we're very passionate about too, and just talking about her journey through this whole process and what's happening in the world today. Many people are finding themselves as unschoolers or homeschoolers at this very moment. So this is a timely interview, and I'm so, just so excited to do this with you, Dayna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm apologizing in advance for the sound of my pug, my dog snoring behind me. If you can hear it, that's all it is this old 11-year-old beautiful pug. So I can't sleep without that noise. But anyway, so thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Such a pleasure to be back with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We loved having you on last time and listening to your journey. Oh, and there's my dog.
It's going to be one of those shows, guys. Dogs and kids, you'll see all kinds of crazy stuff. This is what life is really like for us.
Yeah, that's exactly it. First of all, perhaps just tell us about, what was like when you first started out compared to now.
Well, oh my goodness, I can't even believe how long I've been doing this, actually. It's mind-blowing to me how quickly my kids have grown. So yeah, when I first started out, it was really radical, but I was kind of used to walking down that radical path anyway. I had a natural birth and had home births later and became a Leche League leader and a attachment parenting counselor. So I've kind of, from the very beginning of my son, Devin, who's now 21, from the moment of his birth until now, it's been a journey. And I think what I was craving most was community and a mentor, or more than one mentor, somebody that can show me the way, but that never came. And so I had to listen to my intuition. But the wonderful side effect of that was that inner voice became louder and louder the more I listened to it. So I was guided by my heart and by my children through this journey. But a lot has changed. A lot has changed in 20 years. It is more and more accepted now.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. What would you say to the people now who are finding themselves through this whole thing that's going on in the world at the moment, perhaps thrown into a situation that they're not familiar with? For us, it's been a choice for over 20 years, but they're, Yeah,
I would say try not to be overwhelmed or be fearful, because it's really easy to get pulled into fear of living a life like this, because the whole world is on a vibration of fear right now. And so it's really hard to trust your children during this time and trust yourself. So just know that fear is normal, though. And I'm here to say that it isn't probably what you think it is to homeschool your kids right now, because I think people picture that they have to force their kids to do schoolwork and curriculum, and they can't imagine being in more power struggles with their kids than they had before, and being in that role of needing to be the authority and reward and punish and grade. It never has to be like that, especially now. They're not going to, your kids aren't going to get behind, because the schools are going to just start off where they left off, if not even before that. So they're not going to expect you to do curriculum, and they're not going to expect you to do schooly things. So don't sweat it. If you want to and your kids want to, then by all means go for it. Have fun with it. This doesn't exclude school resources, but it really has to do with, first and foremost, reprioritizing right now. And I'm sure a lot of you have already kind of felt that. You felt what's important. And I bet you're really, really glad your kids are home with you during this intense time. But I just want you to know that when you reprioritize and put your family first, as far as connection and peace and pursuing your passions, basically doing maybe what you do on weekends. You have permission to do that every day. It can be that easy, So I mean, I just don't want parents to think that they need to do what schools do at home, because you definitely don't right now. And I think it's a really good opportunity to mend any kind of relationship issues that you might have with your kids, any contention you may have had in the past, and just think about what you can rebuild and use this amazing time. It's going to be about 6 months, guys, from now until the kids go back, if you know, through summer vacation, which is really long now. You could accomplish a lot during that time. And don't think that you need to accomplish a lot as far as what they learn. You need to accomplish a lot with your family. And the strong foundation of trust that you have with your kids, you're going to have a great influence in their lives when you work on that first. So an education will happen as a side effect of doing those things, a side effect of pursuing your passions and facilitating your kids' interests. And guys, you have such a wonderful community of moms that have been doing this a while that aren't going to be in the position of saying like, we told you so. None of us that I know feel that way. We feel like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, we can be a resource for you without judgment, without criticism. So don't hesitate reaching out at all and asking for help, because that's what we're here for. And we're so happy to be able to do it.
Yes, I read an amazing blog that had been put together where 4 unschooling mums were giving advice yesterday, and it really was wonderful. And that was the advice that they gave as well, was to connect with your children and make that the priority. So can we talk about that a little bit? Because we say it like, oh, just connect with your children. But for some people, I'm thinking that they'll be saying, well, what does that mean? What does that look like from our perspective and from your perspective of living with your children for the last 20 years? What does that really look and sound like?
I think it means what you've probably instinctually wanted to do from the beginning, but you took a different turn. You took the safe turn. You took the turn of, took the left turn into one safe space, which is what most people do in having their kids in school. But I bet you, if you're listening to this podcast, I can guarantee you've had kind of fantasies about living a life of freedom and a life of being able to have your kids home, but maybe you were afraid to. So now the universe is like, here you go. You can do it. And I just think that people are going to find that it's really fun and joyful and peaceful, like way more than they thought. And I was already speaking with a couple mothers today who said, I think I'm going to keep going. And this is the beginning stages, and they're already saying, I'm going to keep going after this. So, so connecting with your kids means by not forcing them to do schoolwork, by not forcing them to do things that they don't want to do, because that damages the relationship. And I know there's people on like every end of the spectrum of how they do things watching this. So if I say anything that seems too extreme, don't sweat it. Just take what works and leave the rest. I know it takes a really long time to get to this mindset, but some of it might resonate with you. So connection for me, I'm going to share a story with you. So when I was about 13, 14 years old, this is really you're going to know my age when I share this, but I used to get a $2 allowance, and I would walk down to the record store down the street. That was like a couple miles away. Back then, that was just a short walk. And I would buy a record, a 45 record of whatever like the newest song was out. And I'd go home, and it was every Thursday. My mother would come in my room and sit on my floor. She'd take her cigarettes in her ashtray, and she'd say, okay, Dane, let me hear the new song. And she would take time out of her life to do this. And I would listen to the record, and she'd comment on it if she liked it, what she didn't like about it. And she'd say, let me hear it again. And we connected over that. Now, for me, that was a time where I felt such love. I really did, because my interests were an extension of who I am. My interest for music was an extension. My mother would value that and come connect with me through that. And that was one of the most like telling experiences that I remember that I pulled into my parenting with my kids. Yeah. So anything your kids are interested in, to try to merge with them and connect with them over those things, whether it's video games, which I know if you hear this, you might be like, oh my goodness. There is a lot of ways to facilitate the interest of video games with your kids. And so try not to judge anything that you don't think is valuable based on the fact that it's not not valued by most in our culture, if it's not an educational thing or what others say are educational. Yeah. That's just one example, connecting over what you both love, connecting over your kids' passions, sitting with them, not criticizing them with how they want to spend their time, because your children see everything they love as an extension of themselves. And when you're criticizing something they love, be it a video game, certain musical choices, whatever it is, and you're seeing it as junk and not of value, and you're limiting it and controlling it, your children really internalize that, and they feel as though something must be wrong with them, that mom doesn't accept. Something is deeply wrong, and it's a real rejecting, distancing feeling, disconnecting feeling.
Yeah.
So during this time, you have the permission and the freedom to be this type of mother maybe you've looked at and admired, of just embracing everything your kids want and that they're going to love, they're going to learn as a side effect of that.
Mm-hmm. I know people in our parenting group have asked to talk about this, like delve deeper into the video games, the screen time kind of thing. And I'm sure you must get asked this question a lot by the parents that you mentor. So what are your answers to them normally when they're asking you questions about, they've got a lot of angst around screen times. I don't kind of know a lot of the literature that's out there now that they're reading or whatever, but what do you hear, Dayna?
Well, it's the number one fear and issue people have surrounding this type of parenting. I'd say 75% of my coaching calls are based surrounding freedom with technology.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of practice on helping parents through this. And so one thing I want to share kind of goes a little deeper. It goes into the psychology and psychological impact of what control and limiting does in the relationship. So children, they come into this world like all humans with an innate desire for freedom and respect. It really is born within us. We want to have the freedom to choose what we want to do. And we want to have the respect to have, support doing that and to not be judged and controlled. So when a parent's fearful about something, the first thing they want to do is control it. And, oh, this is Toulouse.
Hello, Toulouse.
She's a little chihuahua. She likes to sit on my lap during interviews. So she's my little buddy. So when a parent controls or limits something like that, and I know it's well-intentioned. I get it. Parents are really feared about these. There are a lot of fears put into them in a lot of different ways about these kind of things. But this is a big topic to talk about because there's a lot of angles of this and a lot of issues surrounding it and a lot of fear that I hope I can break down for you so you can let that go during this time.
Yeah.
And then forever. What happens to a child or any human being actually when something's controlled by somebody else or limited? For one, they internalize it. They tend to think that whatever is being controlled or limited must be really bad for them, and so they must be a bad person wanting it. And the other thing that happens is because a child wants freedom above all else, they start to have a very unhealthy relationship with something, and they'll overuse it, and they'll just be really imbalanced with it, wanting nothing but that, all in the incredible desire to be free and be respected. So what happens is a parent might, give their child freedom. They might hear that freedom, equals balance with something, and it really does. But in the beginning, a lot of parents will try it, and the child will just think like, oh my gosh, when is mom going to start limiting this again? I better do nothing but get this in while I can before she's apparently gone crazy. And so I need to do nothing but this before she comes to her senses and puts limits again.
Yeah.
And so the first, several weeks or months sometimes that a child has freedom with technology, they kind of want nothing to do but that. And the parent then sees this, judges the freedom and says, oh, this is crazy. This is all he's going to do if I don't limit it. When in fact, the behavior and the unhealthy relationship with whatever's being controlled, the control is what causes the child to want to do nothing but that. It's not the actual technology, it's the control, it's the limiting, it's a side effect of the parent's fear. So I think it's really important if you're going to lift limits and you're going to allow more freedom, you need to allow the relationship to heal between you and your child before you're going to see balance or moderation. Because if your child doesn't trust you necessarily, and they think that you're going to take it away again or limit it, you cannot see the results of freedom until that relationship's healed and they really trust that this is really what's going to happen. You really are going to have freedom. You can use it as much as you want. And yeah.
Yeah, I
Does
love
that make
that.
sense? I hope so. Because it's kind of it's a difficult explanation, I know.
I love that you said freedom equals balance. I love
Definitely.
That is so cool. Yeah.
And it is true with most children. Some kids really love gaming. My son Orion, who just walked by, he is a real gamer. He loves it. And I totally respect as much as he wants to use it. and he has his own balance with it, but he uses it much more than, say, some of my other kids used to at his age. I don't judge it. I totally support it. We have wonderful times of connection and doing other things, but he loves gaming and he loves connecting with his friends. All my children are just walking by. That was Tiffany.
I love it.
Oh,
So when you say, because again, I'd love the people that aren't familiar with, you know, having freedom and no limits to really understand what you mean when you say supporting it. What does that look like? What would that?
Well, supporting it would be to not put limits and controlling it, just allowing them whatever they want to do as far as technology goes and giving it enough time to see the results of balance and moderation.
Yeah.
Now, I think it really is important, though, to find support and find people that are in this mindset to support you through it, because the other piece is what you're mostly reading about technology. What you're mostly reading about technology is based on children who are using technology with a different intention. So I remember when I was a little girl, and most of my life was controlled, just like, you know, most people today and most children from my generation. When I would get home from school, the first thing I wanted to do was sit on the couch and zone out and watch the Brady Bunch. This was like a really popular show back then. And I remember watching it and just feeling the biggest relief that I was finally doing something that I wanted to do with my time. You know, it was a stress relief for me. It was a way that I could just zone out and finally relax. And I remember the peaceful feeling. I loved the feeling I had being able to sit down. And so, you know, sit down and do what I wanted to do. So the intention of use was different for me than it was for my children, for example. So, and, you know, I think when people say technology is like a drug and it's addicting, I think for people that are using it with the intention to heal and the intention to zone out or get away from reality, yes, it could have negative consequences because you're not dealing with your feelings. You're not dealing with the issues that are making you want to reach out to something like that. And, you know, with kids with true freedom, they're making really informed choices on what they're watching and doing and playing. Where they have true freedom, they're not using it as escapism. They're using it with the intention of learning and growth and connection and being social with other people. So the side effects of that are very different. There aren't side effects. There's no negative of that. They're connecting and, you know, they're able to tell when they need to get up and walk around and have a change of scenery and be able to like exercise and do these kind of things. You know, so it might look the same. So two kids could be doing the same thing in two different homes for the same length of time with a very different outcome and with very different intentions. And so the studies that you're reading and the things that you're reading are based on kids whose lives are controlled probably all day, every day. These studies that you're seeing on technology and the results of that aren't done on unschooled kids with freedom. They're not. That's not what they're basing it on. They're doing it, they're studying like who I was when I walked in the Brady Bunch. Like, what are you feeling? I just felt relief that I could finally just stare at something. Zone out. And so I want people to realize that, you know, a really good analogy that I heard from one of my best friends was it's kind of like a knife in the hands of a surgeon versus a knife in the hands of a serial killer. You know, I don't mean to use such extreme terms, but it's the knife. There's a knife, right? And there's very different intentions and you can't blame the knife. And so you really, really have to be evolved emotionally. You have to be awake, and you're listening to this podcast. So if you're already on that path, you're like halfway there. Your awakened being self needs to realize that just because video games and technology have harmed some kids, you're reading studies done on kids who are controlled, probably not happy, probably have a lot of issues, probably don't love being forced to go to school, whatever it is. But you're not reading this, you know, about the small majority of kids who have never dealt with that and who really truly are choosing it as a learning opportunity or to play or to grow. I really want you to, and we'll talk about that more. I'm happy anytime you want any kind of coaching or support, I'm here for you guys. If you want to make an appointment ever with me, we can comb through that and see why your child's using it, why your kids are drawn to technology. And let's comb through and see if these negative side effects are happening or if it's the limits and control that are causing the negativity in your dynamic.
That is awesome that that they can reach out to you and have a coaching call. I'd really recommend people do that if that's something that you really struggle with, or anything where you're struggling around giving your children-free choice, because Dayna was such an inspiration to me. I read your book, Radical Unschooling, very early on in my unschooling journey, as I talked about in the last interview we did. And it was so freeing for me. It was like a permission slip for me. So I do really encourage parents to talk to Dayna and even read her books. And you've got a new book out. Here's my kids coming in.
Right. This is what interviews look like for us. We're moms first, moms first and advocates second. So
yeah, that's it. So you have a new book as well about raising rebels, which I love that title. People, so tell us a little bit about the writing process for that, and what was the creative process, and why you wanted to write that book.
Well, man, it was such a journey with that book. And the cool thing is my publishers live in Australia. They live there. My publisher actually, so when I put the book out and I looked for, when the book was complete, I was looking for publishers. I kind of put my feelers out and asked a few people. And I had a lot of people contact me that wanted to publish the book, even some big name publishers. Yeah. And the one that stood out to me was a 17-year-old girl who was unschooled because her mother found me 10 years before.
Wow.
And had her own publishing company, and she was an unschooled. I was like, my God, of course I have to work with you. You're amazing. And so it was this beautiful connection, and she published my book, and we have this great relationship supporting each other. So the book is called Raising Rebels: Parenting Advice from the Girl Your Parents Warned You About.
Love it.
The title just came to me one day, and I was like, oh, it's true, because I was one of those girls that parents said, oh, you can't hang out with her. She's a bad influence. And it's kind of this funny tongue-in-cheek title, but the book is just my passion. It's such a better, much more well-written book than my first one. Gosh, my first book, it was 11 or 12 years ago, Radical Unschooling. And I had a 6-week-old baby. Orion was 6 weeks old when it came out. And it was just something I feel like I was really called to do, this purpose. I had to get the book out at that time in history. It just had to be out, and it had to have this title, and I put it out. I was a mom of 4 young kids. The book is not the best well-written book ever. However, the intention and the message in there is really, really great.
Helped me a lot.
Yeah, it's just, and it's really basic. Keep in mind, my kids were really young at the time. And so it was based on my experience with them and this philosophical approach. Now, the 10 years after that came is what consists of my latest book, was the next 10 years. And there's all kinds of different stories and quotes and articles and information about applying this to your kids as it gets older. So I love my last book the best. I wrote a book about birth in between those two, because I'm also a doula and midwife, which actually is kind of the prequel of all of these books. And it shows how I started, what even got me thinking about these crazy things. Yeah. So, and you can get my book through the publishing. If you type in Turner Books on Facebook, you'll find the wonderful Unschooled publishing company there.
Yeah.
You can put a link too.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I'm about halfway through it, and I could have pulled so much out of that to ask you about today, but I know that we've just got so much to talk about. Yeah. But perhaps what was your favorite part about writing that?
My favorite part was just the realization that I had really integrated everything. That my life, I don't know about yours, but I look back on my life as, I know I could have done so much different with so many aspects of my life, except for I loved who I was as a mother always. I loved parenting, and I feel like it's the one thing I got right out of everything. Because we're living life walking around with broken pieces from our childhood within us, all the time, and we're always trying to strive to heal those parts. And consciously and unconsciously, we make decisions based on wanting to evolve and wanting to grow. So when this book came out, I saw, and I was seeing in front of me that I had really integrated it. I was truly living what I was preaching. And that felt so good and wholesome, because there's so many other times in life where we don't necessarily do that. So I really loved that I could help people with this authenticity. And in the last several years, because I've gone through a separation, I've been divorced for 2 years from my children's father. And that was a really big journey for me. I realized that what I was communicating to the world about children and parenting, I deserve that same level of respect and kindness and freedom. And I think this happens to a lot of us as moms on this journey. It's like, we realize what we want for the world, and then you realize what you deserve in return. And so that was a really hard thing for me, was to go through divorce. My kids really soared through it. I mean, it was a hard thing for them, like any family, but because we were living the life that we had and a solid foundation of love and trust was there, it was a really unexpected side effect of parenting this way, was that they didn't deal with the typical things that a lot of kids do going through divorce. So that was good. So the book to me was just like this amazing testimony to the side effects of living this life, and that it really works. So raising 2 kids to adulthood and seeing who they are as people is really great too. Because I would get criticism after my first book. People saying, oh, you only have young kids, or just wait till they're grown up, wait till they're teenagers, wait till they're adults. Yeah, all the time people would say that. So, you know, for one, I would get a lot of criticism even within the community, because I was giving information when I had kids that weren't grown. So people wanted to see the results. So now, yeah, I'm on the other side of it going, I don't really, you know, it doesn't matter to me the results any more than my kids' joy and happiness in our relationship, and that they're doing what they love. So
yeah,
that's a really long answer to your question.
No, I love that. And I think that would be awesome. Another awesome thing to talk about is that it is successful. Because these people that are now being thrown into it and going, well, I think the main fear comes out of thinking these beliefs that we have that somehow our children won't be successful, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I encourage people to think about what that means for them. What does success actually mean to you? Yeah. So
the interesting thing in our culture is we were told, and most parents tell their kids and have the belief, that success is the key to happiness, that once you're successful, then you'll be happy.
Yeah.
And what I did was the total opposite. And it worked. And that is, I wanted to be happy. If we were happy, I knew a side effect of that would be success. So we kind of flipped the script living this life, saying, no, we're not going to just live in an unhappy state just to strive for success because the only way we'll be happy is with that. No, you are successful when you're happy. And although, you know, just like any family, we've had our ups and downs, we've had our joys, we've had our sorrows. All in all, my kids are whole and happy people, and they're living their passions, and they're always striving to grow and expand. And so we've done it. You know, the great experiment is here, and we're living. My son Devin's going to get married. I just can't even believe that he's that age already. I can't. But yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to actually go to an unschooling conference if they're thinking about this lifestyle, to meet some unschooling teenagers, and now there's a lot of grown kids as well. So you actually can meet these young adults. And I know I did that in the beginning, and even, I mean, I don't know whether they would have called themselves unschoolers, but I was incredibly impressed by the teenagers. Just their level of, that was one of the other deciding factors for me to keep doing it, because they were just such impressive individuals, unique, and just, yeah. Could you speak into that a little bit, like what you found by meeting, like this girl who's doing your publishing, like so amazing.
I know, so she has such amazing work ethic, and she's so supportive, and she knows what she's doing, and she's completely self-taught with a wonderful mother who's a friend of mine now, Nancy. Nancy, she's facilitated her daughter to do this. I mean, how incredible. So I mean, early on it was really helpful for me to go to events, but I started doing conferences, hosting conferences myself, because I wanted to give everyone that opportunity. And so I've hosted conferences all over the world, and I've traveled all over the world speaking about this, most recently in India and China, which was like a dream come true. I never thought I'd be speaking about these things, like in these amazing countries. But so conferences, to see people, to look at these kids, because a lot of times people are just fearful. They don't know what to expect. And the interesting thing, though, that I find is, you know, a lot of unschoolers, because their parents totally support who they are and how they look and their choices, I think that sometimes you'll look at an unschooler and be like, wow, they're pretty wild looking. They look like a stereotypical bad kid from our upbringing, meaning most of the time when you see kids that look like this, like my daughter Ivy, maybe you could throw a picture just to see what she looks like, right? You know, and I think most parents would see a child like that, a teen like that, and be like, wow, oh my gosh, she's screwed up, or what's wrong with her? Or, you know, this, in fact, Ivy gets so many comments from people going, what's wrong with you? Do you cut yourself? Do you hurt yourself? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? And, you know, and it's really tragic that stereotypically most kids that look really goth like Ivy, a lot of times in our culture are troubled. You know, it's kind of
I think that analogy you made before between the video games and the serial killer or the surgeon is a perfect analogy.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Yes, exactly. And so then they talk to her and they see she's vegan, you know, by choice. She's an animal advocate. She runs an animal rescue.
Yeah.
Her whole life is dedicated to that. She's studying to be a veterinarian. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, she came to me and said, oh, Mom, just so you know, I'm enrolled in Khan Academy online, and I'm taking chemistry, biology. And she said, I need 5 hours a morning to study. I'll be outside, just make sure no one bugs me, and just so you know, that's going down. And I'm like, I cannot even, she's 15. She just turned 15. She took it upon herself to join this and start all these programs, and she ordered all the textbooks, and it was incredible. So, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. And in fact, when kids have certain interests, to delve right into them without judgment, I think is one of the best things you can do. So Ivy loves metal music. She loved Marilyn Manson for like a really long time. It was very inspirational to her, but he's very scary to most parents, I think. And, you know, even like the Columbine shootings were blamed on him back 20 years ago. And so I began to look at all of this through her eyes. Now, I was a total metalhead growing up. So I totally was in the scene. I understood already. The first time Ivy saw Marilyn Manson, she was 11. And she read his biography as well. That was the first book she ever read, cover to cover. I think she was 10 or 11, was his book, his biography, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell, I think it was called. And so I like flipped through it first and said, do you want me to check in it and see if there's anything like uncomfortable that you could be prepared for? And she said, yeah. And I said, there's, you know, some sexual references on this page. If you want to skip over it. She said, I won't read any of that. I like, don't care. I don't care about that. And she enjoyed it. She learned a lot from it. And he was a real inspiration to her because he's an artist and he's a unique individual. He's changed the world. He's a support system for teens. And when I say he's changed the world, I know that people probably think in a bad way, but really he's allowed so many teens to feel heard and validated. Yeah. So I said, I want my daughter to meet him, her idol. And we arranged it and she met him. We hung out on his tour bus, long story. She got this amazing picture with him. I chatted with him for a long time about unschooling, and he is so supportive of it. So not that Marilyn Manson used to be the poster person saying, I support unschooling. I'm just saying, like, he said in an interview, when he was blamed for the Columbine shootings, they asked him, they said, well, what would you say to the boys? You know, if you could talk to them today, you're blamed, you're banned from that city. What would you say to the boys? And what he said, I never forgot. He said, I wouldn't say anything. I would listen to them. And that's something that nobody did. Right. And instantly it was just like, wow, he is a really intelligent man. So I'm just giving one example of when your kids are interested in something, don't be afraid of it. If you've heard, just like the whole knife analogy, Marilyn Manson to Ivy was not what he might have been for some people. He was a source, and she draws now because of him and paints. And she has many, many other interests, but she's in a band and she plays guitar. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be so supported in such kind of radical things that are judged like my kids are. You know, Ivy's so supported and loved and so cherished by so many people and what she does for the world. So,
and I always find it really interesting that when we get to be adults, when we get to kind of 25, 26, we start exploring the world of personal development. And it's often that's when we start being told to follow your passion, you know. So, and then it's like, and listen to your intuition. But by that stage, we've had 25, 30, maybe 40 years even of not doing that. And I often make this reference to people when I'm talking to them about what I did with my children, because I say they started doing that from day one. It's like, It's like they got to follow what you're going to be told in a personal development seminar when you're 30. Why not start earlier? It's like, so and start learning about yourself, because you're kind of the only person that you have,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you respect your kids' choices and what they love, whether it's video games or music or something that other people might respect more, like studying Egyptian history. Like I don't hold any more value with any of my kids' interests. I don't think that Ivy, what she's doing, is more valuable studying to become a veterinarian than Tiffany watching YouTube videos on how to do makeup, and she loves her rap videos, and Orion likes his things, and Devin, he's a unique individual, but he became a computer programmer as a result of having freedom with technology. He also became a blacksmith and a fire twirler and all these other things too, because he had freedom with exploring fire, me by his side. And your kids will allow you to heal from so much, because what they're interested in and what they're drawn to can be really challenging and really fear triggering. But the more you listen to your kids and the more you respect their choices without judgment, you're going to see the learning that happens as a side effect of that. You really, really are. So again, if you need support with any of that, I'm really happy to be here. I'm sure you're available for people for support as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dayna. Would you like it to leave a parting message to our viewers that are, again, going through this time? And
a parting message. I would say, try not to be afraid of this, what's happening. I know there's so much fear out there, but you have the next 6 months or so to completely heal any relationship issues you have with your child, to completely change the direction you're going and focus on what's important. Try not to let how you're doing things trigger you by other people possibly judging you, and find who you are through all of this. I know it'll be hard, but you have so much support. There's community out there. And, welcome to the community. We're here for you.
Yeah, and I will put the links to Dayna's Radical Unschooling page on Facebook. Where else would be a good place for people to find you, read about you?
So if you go to daynamartin.com, DaynaMartin.com, you can contact me through there. Right now, I put together this really cool thing that's turning out to be kind of a huge resource for people. It's called the Emergency Homeschooling Kit. And I'm giving a free copy of my book, Radical Unschooling, and also a free masterclass. Yeah, I wanted to try to give back and help people by supporting them. And so you can get a copy of the masterclass, and you can get a free copy of my book by going to my webpage, and you'll see the link to click on for the Emergency Homeschooling Kit. And things are changing. Oh my goodness, within the first hour of putting that out, it got spread around, and I think I got like 50 people. And then the second hour, it was like 200 people. And then like the fifth hour, I think it was up to like 400 or 500. And so it's like really reaching a lot of people.
Yeah.
So what was once thought of as like radical or fringe is now becoming really accepted and mainstream. So what you once thought wasn't possible, you have an opportunity to do this. And you'll see that we weren't as crazy as maybe some people thought. All right, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom and your message. And I hope it continues to inspire, really encourage people to get onto that kit. That would be wonderful. And to read your first book, which I thought was amazing. So
thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Bye.